everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Excuse me. Trying to get some food in here before we get this thing started. Going to be a long night here. Tough night for the Montreal Canadiens, who looked like the better team for the vast majority of this game. Eric Engels is going to try and join us if he can get in here after his writing's done. But first, as always, I'm joined by Ken Wiebe. Let's bring him in here. Here's Enter Kenny. Hello, Ken, my friend. How are you doing this evening?
Good evening, Sean. I'm excellent, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Had a little bit too much sun out at Grand Beach today, trying to get a little slice of the summer holidays in here before I head back to Montreal tomorrow morning to resume the series. Hoping to go back for a series that picks up here, but there are a lot of people here thinking just like Manitoba ball hockey here says the Habs are done. That's what he thinks, and I know I was thinking of this. Lisa Gale says hide the brooms, and it got me thinking in that Game 4 when they were up on the Winnipeg Jets, and I had the group of guys behind me waving the brooms around. I always think that that's a dangerous game to play, the old broom sweep game, because you know what? The playoffs aren't over, and you never know when you're going down further rounds when people could be pulling out the brooms on you. But interesting game here tonight. Ken, what did you see? Is this something the Habs can walk away from with confidence, or is this one of those frustrating games that is more likely to kill your spirit than help it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously you're disappointed if you're Montreal, but your overriding feeling is one of belief. You just found the template on how to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. It didn't happen tonight. But the Montreal Canadiens, if they had cleaned up their puck management issues on a couple of the goals at critical junctures, they played as well as you can expect to play against the defending Stanley Cup champions. So you're disheartened because you didn't win the game, but at the end of the day, it takes 4 to win the series. I don't think the Habs are done, and I don't think it's going to be a sweep. It could be a sweep, of course, because we know that's how good the Tampa Bay Lightning are. But if you generate 43 shots on goal, including a number of high-danger chances against Andrei Vasilevskiy in the manner that the Montreal Canadiens did tonight, where they got back to being a 4-line team, a structured team, I think you're feeling confident going into Game 3. At least you should be. I mean, yes, like I said, you should be disappointed about certain things, but there are a couple of correctable mistakes. Other than that, the Canadiens played great, and anyone who says that they didn't is inaccurate. I mean, I'm sure some people think they didn't. The team that didn't play well tonight was the Tampa Bay Lightning. We know that they will need to play at a much higher level. The Canadiens raised their level dramatically after a subpar effort in Game 1. They still have some things they need to improve on. They need to be a little bit better around the net, bear down, but they're in this series now. And, of course, you fall behind 3-0. It's a monumental and gargantuan task. It already is down 2-0. But I loved what I heard from Nick Suzuki, one of the youngest players in this series. He immediately said, we need to win 2 games at home and come back here tied 2-2. I thought that was an incredible show of confidence from a young man who played an absolutely exceptional game and generating 9 shots on goal and scoring his team's only goal tonight.
Yeah, great bounce back game for him. And I think you are right in that respect. And, anyone who's watching the show right now who was watching in Game 1 knows that my belief was I thought Game 1 was a real inexcusable no-show for the Montreal Canadiens. And one of the reasons I think that is just because of what we saw here tonight. They really got nothing going in that first game, so there wasn't a lot to build on. And because of that, you get into a game like this. And I feel like if they had got some things going in that first game, maybe they would have had a little bit of more confidence to deal with. Maybe that would have generated some goals here tonight. Maybe that's they gave Vasilevskiy that little bit of an invincible feeling in Game 1, and now he carries that into Game 2. Tracy O'Kranick had talked about Vazzy shutting them down, which I think is entirely the case here. But this is the deal. You can't give games away against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that's why that was problematic, because tonight is a perfect example and shows you that the Tampa Bay Lightning cannot show up and still win the game. And I think that's what we saw here tonight, at least up until the third period, where I thought Tampa's muscle memory, when they get a lead, they're the same thing as the Montreal Canadiens. Everyone needs to know that right now. The Montreal Canadiens got to where they got by scoring first, clamping down the game, and then capitalizing on the other team's mistakes. That's what Tampa can do in equal measure. So if you're the Montreal Canadiens, you need to start to find a way to score first. They haven't had a lead yet in this series. But I will say this, I agree with you. I like what Nick Suzuki said, and I like the approach that the Montreal Canadiens take and have taken these entire playoffs of really understanding the situation that they are in. When they had the chance to close out the Jets in Game 4, they did it, and they approached it in a way that they knew you don't want to give the Winnipeg Jets any life, because we know what it's like to have a little bit of life and turn that into an unexpected series win, which they did against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round. And I just thought that every step of the way there was confidence and a realization of their series, of their situation and where they were in that last series against the Vegas Golden Knights. And to your point, Suzuki says, they know what they need to do. They know that it's going to need to be 2 wins in Montreal in order to give themselves much of a chance here. And they're not afraid to say it. And I appreciate that. They're not saying we'll take it one game at a time. They know that there's a mammoth task, but they believe that they can get to that task because they see what they did in Game 1. They see how much they built in Game 2, and they believe, and we've seen this from them in a lot of their series, that they get better and better as the series goes on. They need to get better right now. Game 3, they need to have their best game of the playoffs. There can be no excuses, and that's from the top of the lineup to the bottom of the defense, and their goaltender, I think, needs to steal a game in Game 3.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Vasilevskiy, was outstanding. Vezina type quality goaltending today. Also, like what Corey Perry said to the answer to your question, Sean, we did a lot of things great today, but we need to find another gear. Here's a guy who knows what it's like to win. There are no moral victories, especially in the Stanley Cup Final when you fall behind 2-0. But at the same time, you obviously know that there are some things in this game that you can build off of if you're the Montreal Canadiens. We talked about puck management. Puck management was a major issue on 2 of the 3 goals. We know that. So that's something that needs to be cleaned up. It's very unlikely that the most reliable player on the ice is going to have a turnover in the final 5 seconds of a game in Game 3. Phil Deneau has been outstanding for the Montreal Canadiens. This is not pinning it on him by any stretch, but if you had asked Luke Richardson or any player in the Montreal Canadiens, who do you want the puck in their hands in the last 5 seconds? It would probably be Phil Deneau. But the turnover was caused along the boards by Blake Coleman. Ryan McDonagh makes an excellent read to step up and get the puck to Goodrow, who chips it past Ben Sherratt. And then, in a slight moment of indecision, where Deneau thinks he might have to put pressure on Goodrow, he realizes when it's too late that he has to get to Coleman. He hustles back, but by that point, Coleman has a step on him. Goodrow makes a great pass, and Coleman revisits history and has a replay of his goal against the Boston Bruins. And it's just an exceptional effort by a line that has absolutely been fantastic in the first 2 games of this series, throughout these entire playoffs for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Sean, we talked about it on our Sound On segment at Sportsnet. They almost made it 3-1 in the opening minute of the third period, right, with that great Blake Coleman chance. I thought the Price makes just an absolute... That's probably he made his best save of the entire night early in that in the third period there on Coleman. But it just wasn't quite enough. I don't think that Price has been poor in this series. I know some folks are saying he needs to be better. He needs to be better in that, tonight Vasilevskiy stole the game. So that means Price is going to have to get one in order to help get his team back. So... At Waiters 27, there is a full combo platter of blame to go around. You're right. The D-to-D was the right play. Weber has time to make a play. He passed it to the right player, but there was a situation where that puck's got to get deep. It was an excellent play by the opponent. And again, Ryan McDonagh makes an outstanding read to jump up in the play. That puck has to, it can be iced, it can be chipped, it can be anything, but the only thing that it couldn't be was turned over in the neutral zone with speed, and that's exactly what happened. And before you blink, it's there it is. There's a goal where Montreal probably played its best series or period of the entire series, if not the playoffs. And instead of feeling great about your situation at 1-1, you're down 2-1, and you wonder how in the world did that happen? How did we play great for 1959 and somehow come out facing a deficit? I mean, that was one of those situations where it can't happen. So, but I mean, these things do happen when you're playing against the Stanley Cup champions. We said it all along. The margin for error is very slim, and if you don't play a near perfect game, it's tough to win. I mean, like I said, I think the Price was fine. I don't blame him for any of the goals. I think that there were mistakes made behind him that were out of his control. The one, I think, goes off of John Merrill's shin pad and changes direction. He still gets his blocker on it, but it just squeezed through. But you can't be fine in the playoffs. You need to be great, and that's what we're talking about here. When the other guy at the other end makes 42 saves, you need to find a way to outplay him right now. And I think that Price, the Canadiens aren't here without Price. But tonight, the best goalie on the ice was Andrei Vasilevskiy. I don't think that anyone can make an argument otherwise.
As far as stakes in the heart go, that goal was about the size of a sharpened telephone pole. I mean, it was bad for a number of reasons. One, because of what you're talking about. The Habs had won that period, and they'd not only had they won that period and been the better team, but they had a goal scored on them early that was a little bit of a bad bounce. And they fought their way back in to tie it, right? So they even get a response. Even though they don't walk away with the lead, at least they can walk away from that and say, we generated the vast majority of the chances, and we fought our way back into a game against a team that's hard to fight back against. And so to allow that period to escape and go into the column of the Tampa Bay Lightning is really bad for that reason. But you touched on it. I mean, the players out there on the ice who end up getting beat in that situation, starting with Phil Danault, who you touched on earlier. I mean, not only does he turn the puck over, but he turns around, and the realization is there. He's got every opportunity to be the first guy back and be in between the net and Coleman, except he gets caught puck watching and goes towards Goodrow. Coleman can't make a beeline for the net because he's got to hold up to stay onside. So he's got to hold his momentum while Danault has no restrictions and can beat him there. And by the time Danault makes the recognition of where Coleman is, he basically makes it there side by side. But even at that same time, Coleman is the guy who fully stretches out to get the puck. And I think there's a late realization by Danault that he doesn't dive and try and knock away the puck until he realizes that Coleman is diving. Coleman has all the effort on that play. Danault gets cut, turns it over, gets caught puck watching, doesn't make the right read. And then even when he gets there, he still has time to make the play and gets out efforted by the other guy. And that is why it's such a hard one for the Canadiens to take, because it's not a rookie. It's not a guy like Cole Caulfield who you've got in the game and you assume the risk versus reward that he brings. The kid was playing college hockey 2 months ago. So if he ends up going out there and making the wrong play and gets burnt, that's fine. You're assuming that risk. That's not supposed to come from Phil Danault. So when Phil Danault is the guy who is costing you the most inopportune goal at the most inopportune time, it's hard to recover. And that's what I thought we saw from the Montreal Canadiens in the third period of that game. Ken, you had brought up Corey Perry. I wanted to go this. I haven't asked you this yet. But Corey Perry said in his postgame that he'd got up and he'd said something to the boys. And it's something that I got thinking about, because Corey Perry apparently stood up in the room after the Canadiens went down 3-1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and was telling them about this golden opportunity that they had, right? And if I'm, a player on that team, I'm probably sitting down 3-1 to the Toronto Maple Leafs and hanging my head. And this guy gets up, who's got scars all over his face and looks like he has every reason to not be having fun, and talks about how much fun the opportunity is that they have in front of them. Well, it sounds like he stood up and he said something similar tonight. And, I don't know if you feel the same way that I did, but the Canadiens' body language and their response in the post-game media avails, I thought was much better than it was in game one. And I wonder how much that has to do with the fact that Corey Perry may have stood up, said something that gave this team a little bit of a jolt and some belief going forward.
Well, two quick things there, Sean. When you get your behind kicked in game one, it's hard to put up a false front of positivity. But when you put up 43 shots and play pretty close to your template, other than a couple of mistakes that end up in the back of your net, it's a lot easier. But I agree. I mean, you know what sucks? Being down 2-0 in the Stanley Cup Final if you're the Montreal Canadiens, especially when you played as well as they did in Game 2. You know what sucks worse? Not being in the Stanley Cup Final and having a chance to try to rally against a team and get your name engraved on that cup that you play all season for. Because there's a lot of other teams that wish they were in the Stanley Cup Final, even if they were down 2-0. I loved Corey Perry's answer. The message is, don't stop doing what we've been doing all playoffs. Look at what happened in the first round. They were down 3-1. Stayed focused, stayed with our game plan, never changed, never did anything, and continued to push. It's no different now. It doesn't matter. First round, second round, third round, finals, whatever it is, if you continue to play your game, you continue to do the things that got you here, you're going to be successful. I said it in the room. I said, it's fun. This is hockey. It's fun. Enjoy it. I love that. That is spoken by a guy who knows what it takes to win and knows exactly what other teams and other players that are on summer vacation are thinking right now.
Just want to say this to Marcus Engels. He always tries to join us as soon as he can. I mean, it's been around. I think last game he got here before the half hour was through. That said, there's some nights that he hasn't made it. We all work for Sportsnet. We're all trying to do our regular jobs and kind of do this as a little bit of bonus thing afterwards. So if Eric can join us, he will, and he's usually phenomenal when he gets here, Marcus. Hopefully we can provide good insight, and if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat, and we'll try and handle those as best we can. And if Eric joins, that's great. If not, hopefully we can get the job done for you here. There's been a number of questions about it, Ken. Let's go in this direction. Dominic Ducharme expected to return for Game 3. What kind of outcome do you think he could have on this series with his return?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's an emotional boost. We know that Dom Ducharme has been involved via Zoom calls, and we know that Luke Richardson has done an excellent job for someone in a very difficult and challenging situation. I love how calm he was after the game. He knows exactly what has been happening. And, I mean, in some ways, Sean, a lot of people owe Luke Richardson an apology for saying that, you know, Luke Richardson is wrong if he thinks that Nick Suzuki can hang with the Braden Point line. Well, tonight he was proven pretty much correct that line was pretty darn good against them. But having said that, I do think that Dom Ducharme will go back to the heat-seeking missile line, as you have so aptly named them. I think that Danault has to go head-to-head with Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point because that has been the formula for success for the Montreal Canadiens. But on the flip side, you also know that if you can get Nick Suzuki away from Braden Point, who's an exceptional two-way player, you might be able to free that line up to get a little bit more offense. So I do think that is something that should give them a bit of a benefit. And waiters, I mean, I said Vasilevskiy stole the game. I don't know how much more credit I can give him. He was exceptional. He played at a Vezina.
I don't think he's saying specifically to you. I mean, okay. I bring this up because I totally agree. I mean,
yeah, he was awesome. I mean, you're right.
This is one of these situations where, and we've talked about this even last year in the bubble. You know, everyone's talking about Hedman and Kucherov, and even Kucherov we think doesn't get the credit that he deserves. But I mean, Vasilevskiy to me was phenomenal in this game. There's one specific save that he makes when I was saying to you, Ken, like, you know, what do players say against goalies like that? You got to take his eyes away. Well, there was a play where there was a shot from the point and it was redirected. It was a high slot tip and it was going perfectly on the inside of the post. And the camera angle that I saw, like, clearly he must have seen something or found a way to see through a throng of players in front of that. I don't know how he did it, but right at the very last second, his toe comes out and stops the puck. He was phenomenal tonight, and I'll give him credit for game one as well. I don't know if that was Waiters who just said that Vasilevskiy was the series MVP. I couldn't agree more right now because I do think, okay, so here was a night, or Sunny Side Up says that the series MVP. I couldn't agree more because we take a look at what happened here tonight and someone touched on it. It's the playoffs. You can be the better team and lose games. That's what happened to the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Well, the Montreal Canadiens were in it in that last game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, despite Tampa Bay being the far better team. It's down 2-1, and they had a lot of really, really good opportunities. And Vasilevskiy turned them away. And if he doesn't in those moments, that's one of those games where I think the Canadiens get their feet underneath them. And that third period is a different period, just like what we saw here tonight. The Tampa Bay Lightning didn't have their feet underneath them, get a little bit of a goal after a lot of great Vasilevskiy saves, get their feet underneath them and shut the Canadiens down and grind out that win, adding a late goal off a little bit of a fluke. But Vasilevskiy has given everything you could have possibly asked for or expected. And this is totally true as well, but Vasilevskiy has given everything you could have possibly asked for or expected from him in this series. The 2 goals that have gone in have been, I guess the Suzuki shot actually goes straight in, but he's expecting
it was spinning though.
Corey
The puck
Perry.
was, yeah.
Yeah, and he's expecting Corey Perry to get his stick on it and redirect it. His pad is following the redirect. So both goals have been like tough goals for him to stop. But Vasilevskiy, to me, clearly the difference in this series. And it makes you wonder, Ken, where the Canadiens, let's go there. I asked Luke Richardson about it, and he'd made a comment about.
Okay. Let's finish this first 3 or 4.
Well,
I mean, I agree with this completely. NBHA ball hockey, and I was going to ask Sean. I mean, I think the waters are more muddy than they'd ever been, because after Kucherov, I would have said Kucherov completely bolstered his case to win the MVP. Tonight, Vasilevskiy completely bolstered his case, and in Game 3, it could be Braden Point who bolsters his case to be MVP as well. So. Conn Smythe obviously is what I mean. Geez, all those guys are legitimate candidates, and they're all playing great. I mean, and let's never even mind what Hedman's doing on the back end. This year, I think Hedman would be in 4th place in that race, though. But man, those guys are all playing exceptionally well. One quick thing. A lot of people have been asking. So the folks that you've been asking about the Canadiens' defense, we want to wait. We'll dive into that when Eric Engels is coming on. Eric has just sent a text saying that he's going to be coming up fairly shortly. Excellent. So we'll attack that later. In terms of potentially being in the Canadiens' head, I don't see that as being an issue. I do know why you brought it up, but I think that we're maybe. The other part that Luke Richardson said is he fully expects the Canadiens' offense to get going and for them to start scoring goals. So I don't think that they're squeezing the stick around the net. But having said that, they obviously respect Vasilevskiy. They know he's a world-class goalie, and they're going to need to do a little bit better job of taking away his eyes if they're going to score more than a goal a game. They need to get to that magic number of 2 or more in order to win games, and I expect they will have a chance to do that if they play like they did tonight.
We're going to bring in Eric Engels right now. True to his word, he said he'd get here as soon as possible. Eric, one line Lynn is not going to give us some time off. She wants us to do halftime Winnipeg Blue Bomber games, and she's asking that you join as well. I don't know if you'd commit or lock down to that, but let's dig into the task at hand here. Montreal Canadiens, we were just talking about the scoring. You were in on the call. I'd asked Luke Richardson a question. He talked about saying, hey, he gets it. They know what it's like to have Carey Price and leave other teams feeling, like they're shaking their head, or that, it's pretty big in the moment. What are you seeing from the Canadiens shooters right now in regards to Vasilevskiy and their inability to score on him in a lot of really clear, wide open chances?
I think he's really good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm seeing anything from the Canadiens specifically that they're not doing the right things to try to beat him. I thought he played exceptional tonight. It was really one of his best performances of the playoffs, and much the stuff that has made him one of the best goaltenders in the world, if not the guy. The other thing is that this Lightning team is so opportunistic. You give them one little chance and they make you pay for it. And I thought the Canadiens played an excellent game. I thought the Lightning made enough mistakes that they could have lost 2 games. And they lost 1, and they didn't lose any, excuse me. And, the Canadiens, you look at how they've gotten through the playoffs, they're full value in deserving to be where they are, but it doesn't happen without a few bounces going your way. And right now it seems as though the hockey gods are evening the score. So I don't think they got any bounces in this game aside from the one that came off Nick Suzuki's stick. And even in putting that one in perspective, like he scored on a lucky shot. He got unlucky on 8 other shots in this game. I think the Canadiens are in tough here against a really formidable opponent that even when they don't play their best ends up winning a hockey game.
Well, what's the pressure that comes with that, Eric? I mean, it's funny. I was going to ask the same question that Arpon Basu had asked. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're the Montreal Canadiens, you feel like you're absolutely dominating a game, and you turn around and basically every mistake they made tonight ended up in the back of their net. What kind of pressure does that create, and does that have the Canadiens squeezing their stick, knowing that it's that important to score on those chances you get, because it doesn't, all you have to do is give this Tampa team an inch and they can burn you.
Yeah, I think every game's different. Like, I think, that proved to be the case in this game. It won't necessarily be the case in the next game. Maybe the Canadiens will play terribly and win. Who knows? Like, we've seen, if you go back to the Vegas series, game 3, Montreal played a horrendous game and won the game. Game 4, they played just as well as tonight, if not better, and lost. Game 5, they came out with a phenomenal game and won, and everyone said it was the greatest game they've played in a decade. I thought it was a carbon copy of the game they played in Game 4. They just got a couple extra bounces. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Corey Perry was talking about it. He said that, it's the margins are so thin that that's often what the difference is. And I just think I don't even think the Canadiens were squeezing their sticks too tight tonight or getting lost in that whole, if we make one mistake, it's going to cost us a goal mentality. Whether or not that creeps in as this goes along, given the way it's gone, is something that you can't ignore. It's definitely a possibility. It's a tough situation. They're up against a phenomenal team. I have said from the start, I think they're the best team in the world. I picked them to win the Stanley Cup at the beginning of the playoffs, and that's why. And Vasilevskiy has been phenomenal, and we'll see what the Canadiens come up with at home. They're going to have to find a way to shift momentum in their favor.
Quick one for me about the defense. A lot of people have asked about the defense core. Is this a matter of the major minutes and the physical toll starting to take a toll on the 4 Clydesdales? I don't agree with one of these guys saying they're pulling up on legal hits. They're still been physical. Edmondson is giving people the business whenever he can, but is this a matter of the Canadiens' depth on the back end catching up with them a little bit, Eric, or what do you see there? Because I still think that a lot of these guys are playing a very physical game, but it seems as though there have been a few more mistakes that are ending up in the back of the net that we weren't seeing necessarily in the first couple of rounds.
Well, I don't think it's catching up to the 4 guys so much as it is the 2 that aren't playing as much. I don't think John Merrill has had a good 2 games in the Stanley Cup Final, and Eric Gustafsson was a disaster on the ice tonight. Like, he just couldn't find a way to make any play work, but it's specifically on the power play where they had their best opportunities to steal away this game or actually get rewarded for the effort that they put into this game. And, that was a mess. The 4-on-3 obviously was what do I think of the way they handled it? I see this question coming in. Like, you could talk all you want about the guys who were on the ice, and Gustafsson and Weber and Toffoli and Suzuki. I think they're good enough to produce a goal in a 4-on-3 situation. The way they set things up and the way Tampa set up in front of them and the way they weren't able to generate anything through the middle and create chances that way, that was problematic. And you could have said it would have been a huge turning point in the game. It didn't prove to be. Like, the Canadiens still had so many chances to score in that second period, completely dominated, and they didn't find a way to do it other than a trick shot from Nick Suzuki that's kind of slipped through and bounced its way past Vasilevskiy. It's a kind of a shocking outcome for them. Like, they really did deserve better and didn't get it, and that's hockey sometimes. That's the way it goes sometimes, and for it to happen on this big of a stage at this big of a moment at a time where they really needed the split, they're going to have to do something really impressive coming back to Montreal. And you know what? I see. I'll just wrap this point up and say I see the question coming in about Romanov and Kulak. I think Brett Kulak is a player who can make a difference in a series like this with the speed of the Lightning and the way he is able to move the puck and move his feet. The issue with him is that he only plays at 5-on-5 and doesn't have a penalty killing role or a power play role. But the Canadiens are going to have to consider inserting him anyways. And Romanov is an option also, but only if Petrie has the ability to really step into the power play and make a difference with the way his hand is feeling.
there was conversations after the game. Luke Richardson saying that he believes, in this team's offense, and they're going to build. They got their chances. When I asked him what more they need to do, it sounded like he didn't really think they needed to do anymore, and maybe that's fair considering, the amount of shots that they were able to put up. I'd seen people talking earlier in the chat about, inserting a guy like Thomas Tatar. Ken and I covered the St. Louis Blues quite a bit on their way to winning their Stanley Cup. And there was a series they played against Dallas where there was just constant movement by the coaches, bringing guys in and out of the lineup. That hasn't been this Montreal Canadiens team. They've been pretty steady down the stretch. From what you know of this team, bringing in a guy like Kulak, and I don't know what your thoughts are on Tatar, but would it be bad news for this team if they were thinking of making changes like that, trying to create change in players to try and get the spark that they're looking for, or is what they need in this room, and they've proven that already?
No, I think there is an adjustment to make on defense. As far as Tatar is concerned, it's nothing personal against him. It's just where it's like
Right.
you have to think about where you put him. And now that the series shifts back to Montreal specifically, you're going to get the matchup you want against Braden Point and Kucherov with Gallagher, Lehkonen if he's healthy enough, and Deneau playing against them for the lion's share of their shifts. That's a big advantage for them. And if you were going to put Tatar in, you'd put him in with Deneau and Gallagher. If there's a point where Tatar gets back in this series, it might be as it shifts back to Tampa Bay, provided the Canadiens have given themselves a chance to go back there. Because against Gord and Gaudreau and Coleman, the Deneau line with Gallagher suddenly has an emphasis on it to try to create offense because they're not being put in the shutdown role that they're expected to fill. And John Cooper, I think, whether Luke Richardson is there or Dominic Ducharme is there, which he will be if they go back to Tampa, John Cooper is such a good coach that he has really managed the matchups exceptionally well. You know that the Canadiens wanted to make several adjustments in that regard, and I thought they did a better job. And obviously, with the way the game went, they played a better game. But that's where you might throw Tatar back in, is going back and saying, okay, we're going to get stuck with Gallagher and Deneau up against that Gord line. Let's throw Tatar on there and try to really make them defend us instead of doing what they're doing, which is crushing the Canadiens in the offensive zone. By far Tampa's best line in this game.
Ken, I can keep going here. Hey, Ducharme aren't we expecting him back for Game 3?
Yeah,
He's
he
back.
just meant that when the series shifts back to
I
Tampa,
just
he
meant,
won't
no
have
matter
last
who's
change.
behind the bench, no matter who's behind the bench in Tampa Bay, John Cooper has done such a good job that
Right.
I don't think there's. It's not like the Canadiens didn't try to make a bunch of adjustments in terms of how badly they were beat in the matchup game in the first game. So, yeah, I just think you're not going to be able to get away from the Gord line if you go back to Tampa, whether it's Ducharme or Richardson. It's going to be Ducharme, and that might be the time where you say, let's throw Tatar in there, put him with Gallagher and Deneau, and have those guys run and play offense. They know how to do it. They've done it they've been one of the best 5-on-5 lines in the league for 3 years straight.
So Eric, if there's belief that and Luke Richardson had said that, do you buy the argument that the Canadiens can take a look at Game 1, in which I thought they just weren't prepared and they were a no-show, and they built in Game 2? I thought their PK, especially with Joel Armia, I thought he gave them a real good spark early in this game and kind of set them up to succeed and have that role that they had in the first and second period. They're taking a global point of view from this, the Montreal Canadiens are, and I think they're doing so as a team that has basically got better and better in the series, in each series they've been in. Are you buying that there's enough to take away from Game 1 and 2 and the build that we've seen, that this team feels it can continue to build and is capable of its best game in Game 3?
I don't not to defer, but I don't think it matters if I buy it. I think what matters most is they buy it.
Well, don't you think they do? They sure sound like it.
I think they do. I think they played a fantastic game in this one and have it in proper perspective, that a bounce here, a bounce there, and it's a different outcome. I think they look at the first game and know that they were the worst of the two teams, but also that they could have taken an early lead and manipulated the game in a different way. Ken, what do you think? Like, do you think the
I think that
Canadiens
they
should
were
be
great
confident?
tonight.
Yeah.
No, I think that they're, again, you hate to be down 2-0, but you have plenty of reason to believe that you found the template. You eliminate 2 puck management issues and you found the template on how it is to win. Is it deflating that you didn't find a way to win and that you gave up a goal in the last second or 0.5 seconds? Of course, but I think that Montreal showed tons of great signs, but I also now expect Tampa to be a heck of a lot better because John Cooper's going in there saying, hey, boys, we're lucky to win that one, so let's crank this back up. But I do think Montreal should have plenty of reason to be confident, especially we've talked about Nick Suzuki almost every time we've had you on. That was another defining moment for Nick Suzuki. It has nothing to do with the goal that he scored. It was the way that he came back in the game. I love the fact that he embraced the challenge of going up against Braden Point after having his lunch money stolen in Game 1. He was absolutely outstanding, competitive. I thought he was excellent in the game. I loved what I heard from him. I love the confidence in him saying, we need to win 2 at home and come back here 2-2. I love that. I mean, there's a chance they might not go back there, but not in Nick Suzuki's mind. And that is another glorious example of a great leader in a young man's body who is mature and wise beyond his years. And you know what? Some guys in his situation, they would have been begging the coach to put him on the ice against somebody else, even if they didn't have last change. Instead, he said, I want to go up against that guy because he's their best center. So you can't teach that. That is intrinsic belief, and that's what I think that is potentially makes Nick Suzuki a future captain of the Montreal Canadiens. That's how high I am on this player from watching him from afar.
I think there should be confidence that they can do it again. I think this is one of those games that turns out really differently if they can pot one of these goals against Andrei Vasilevskiy. And I think if they just kind of take that realization that we beat him, and I think Luke Richardson was saying that if we can beat him with 1 or 2 of those, it's an entirely different game. To me, the difference in this series so far, and someone was asking a little bit earlier about, the Canadiens, maybe this is just a case of them being a year away. I do really think that we've seen Stanley Cup pedigree at play in this series. I think that the Habs gave away a game without the effort that they required in Game 1, and Tampa Bay came out flying. To me, that's a team that knows the situation, knows that they're in, and isn't going to be giving away a game. And then I think, if you take a look at the missed opportunities from the Habs and the understanding of the moment, not just Game 1, but that situation where Phil Deneau gets caught and they turn over that puck and get scored on, that's just something that can't happen in that moment. And what I see there is a Canadiens team that is thinking, time's winding down on the clock, let's just get this period done. And a Tampa Bay Lightning team that is thinking we are going to go as hard as we can right to the bell, because they've learned those lessons. They've got there and they know that's what it takes to win a championship. So to me, this is a situation where Tampa gets it. I don't think we've seen from this Montreal lineup that they get it. I think they've been fast learners, and those are the lessons that they need to learn. Like there can't be any slumping at the wrong time of the game. This is a team that needs to stand on guard right through the game, and that's what I'll be watching for in Game 3. If they can do that, they give themselves a lot better of a chance. They were a lot closer tonight. I mean, that's a game I think that they win 9 times out of 10. Didn't turn out here tonight, and I think it's the understanding of the moment or the lack thereof for the Montreal Canadiens that cost them that game. If they can take that lesson forward, I think they can make this a series, although they've dug themselves a heck of a hole.
I'm not sure what they're supposed to do so differently from what they did tonight, other than
Convert
Vasilevskiy. I mean, and it's not like, I don't think it requires a scouting report or an intense video analysis, and you got to shoot here and you shoot there. Like, at the end of the day, the recipe's always been the same. You get in front of him, you create traffic, you block his eyes, you get shots through, and when you get a breakaway or whatever it is, you hope that you've picked the right spot, and he hasn't. I mean, he picked all the right ones in this game. He played a fantastic game, and that's what he's capable of doing. And I think the same applies to Carey Price. He's going to have to be better, though, with whoever's blaming him. Like, tough game for him to play, and he faces 8 shots in the first 2 periods. The shot that beats him goes through 4 bodies, and John Merrill, who's standing in no man's land trying to make a block and doesn't come up with it. That's tough. I think Price can be better. I'm not saying he was his best, but the game is definitely not on him. The Canadiens had 20 chances to win it with 43 shots on net. I mean, there's no. I don't think it's like. I don't think it's something that they did wrong. That's just the way the game went. The bounce. Sometimes you do need the bounces. Like, we rarely like to talk about that. We like to believe you make your own luck. If this wasn't the Canadiens making their own luck in terms of the way they played, they just had a couple of things go against them, and that's tough. And the worst part about it is they lost game 1 in convincing fashion, in the way that they weren't prepared and didn't play, and there was a lot of things within their control that they didn't control. And that put them in a situation where they could be vulnerable. And if they gave up a couple of bounces, lose a game. And now they're down 2 games in the Stanley Cup Final. They're going home to Montreal. The narrative continues that the odds are completely stacked against them. And a lot of people will begin to count them out even more than they already did. And how they rally around that and what they come up with in game 3, whether they play better or not, the result will be the most important thing.
Someone seemed to be pointing the finger at Shea Weber for the second period turnover. For me, that's not on Weber. I mean, his outlet on the D2D is Phil Deneau along the boards. I don't think that it was a bad pass. I know that Blake Coleman makes a nice read to step up, and then McDonough makes an even better read to get the puck across and make it move north. To me, Deneau has to get that puck past Coleman or get it deep or freeze it along the boards or whatever it takes. In that situation, you can't have a turnover. And Eric, what did you see? To me, there's just a fraction of a second of indecision where he wonders if he has to go to Goodrow, but then realizes he's the only one that can get to Coleman. And by that point, it was too late by the dive. How did you break that play down?
Sequence of mistakes from Sherratt. If you're going to make a really aggressive play at the line like that, the puck can't get by you clean, to Weber kind of getting turned around and just losing his man with enough time, and Deneau making a dive that gets superseded by the dive by Coleman. At the end of the day, that's one of those situations, I think, where if you're the Canadiens, you're looking at the clock and just trying to make a zone entry denial and thinking like it's not going to bite you. And with a second left, it does. I mean, great play. You want to know how I see it? Like, it's a really great play by the Tampa Bay Lightning, like in almost every element of it. And
Agreed.
That line was phenomenal tonight. Like, the Tampa Bay Lightning played terrible for most of the game. John Cooper called it an unremarkable performance. He could have easily said it was terrible. He might have had Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, and Barclay Goodrow not done what they did, because they won the game for them outside of Vasilevskiy, who was fantastic.
One other quick one. Sean and I were talking about this on our sound on. How big a role on the failed reverse is playing in front of fans versus being a North Division team that spent almost all year long, where you have, when Petrie would generally be calling reverse there, Carey Price would hear him, that just in case the reverse happens, he's on the right post instead of in the middle of the net. Again, it's so hard for us to know, not being in the building, what kind of communication there was, or even if maybe potentially Kucherov called it instead of Petrie, which maybe caused the turnover itself.
Flat. Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
You know what, guys? I don't think it had much to do with anything. I don't think it was a communication breakdown either. I think that play is on Jeff Petrie as much as it is Joel Edmondson. I think that was a natural kind of reversal play, a normal play to make. Petrie doesn't make the effort to put himself in a support position from out of the corner in the rink, knowing that that's got to be one of the options that Edmondson is going to turn to. It's kind of their standard breakout in the way they operate anyways. And that is absolutely how they're coached, is to be kind of a tight-knit group at all times. And once you've made a play with the puck, to immediately get to the next position to be able to support it, so that you can provide that option even if it would be a bad kind of pass that Palat can get in the way of, at least Petrie would be there to close it down and not have it turn into an easy goal. And it was just a lapse late in the game from two guys who are playing a lot, but not only playing a lot, but playing a lot while the Canadiens are chasing the game and trying to generate something up ice and make a play. People want to say that Petrie had an ordinary game tonight. I think that's fair. I also think he's been playing pretty badly hurt, and he tried to contribute to the offense. And if he could shoot, he might have ended up with at least two of the goals that the Canadiens could have scored in this game. Tough situation, honestly.
Eric, where would you go with the matchups now that you've got home ice advantage? Where do you think the Canadiens could potentially open up some offense there?
Well, if I'm them, I want Deneau obviously against points line. That's pretty easy. I want Josh Anderson's line with Kakaniemi and Byron playing against the Gord line, trying to wear them down a little bit. I want the Stahl line less so in a matchup situation, more so playing on offensive zone faceoffs and a couple key defensive ones with the way Armia played tonight. And I want Suzuki going up against the Stamkos line without Alex Killorn there. I think that's an opportunity for them with the confidence with which they played in this game. And I agree with someone who I saw it in the comments. I think it was the guy who's got my water bottle in the picture in there.
Perfect.
Tyler Toffoli needs to step up. He's
Yes.
got it. And I thought he tried to tonight. Like, he generated a couple chances for himself that normally he would bury, and maybe he would have against any other goalie in the world, not named Price or Vasilevskiy. Like, he's got to step up, and home ice should give him the opportunity to do so if they get that matchup. I like the idea of the Suzuki line running up against Cirelli and Stamkos and Tyler Johnson. I think they'll get a bit more opportunities in transition, which is where they thrive. And yeah, okay, so we're seeing a lot of this question. You guys have thoughts on this?
I mean, again, I think it's unfortunate for the series that it's not going to be 10,500. But I mean, I guess if you're the province, you have to look out for the well-being of the province first and foremost. And the people that are comparing it to outdoor gatherings, I mean, it's a totally different scenario. I actually liked what we heard from, the presentation and how, it's the square footage of the Bell Center and how that maybe relates to 10,500. But I mean, again, these people aren't just making random decisions. They're making these based on science and trying to do what's best for the community. So, of course, would the series be better if it were played in front of 10,000 or 20,000? Of course, but at a time when progress is being made on so many levels in terms of battling the virus, I guess I can understand where the decision is made. I mean, the public safety and health and well-being is the first priority, and we shouldn't be surprised by this. This is 15, 16 months of this. So we need to get to a better place, and I hope that we're heading to a better place.
I know how you feel about this, Eric, and I mean, I agree for the most part. I wonder how much of this is being made by the science, and I wonder how much of this has just been based off the fact that these are the rules they have, and controlling the outside of the Bell Center would take either special rules or don't fall in line with the same rules that exist, in other areas of the province. Like, I can't think that the Quebec government and, their health officials take a look at that situation outside the Bell Center and think that if you think it's dangerous to put 10,000 people in the Bell Center, I can't think that you don't think it's not as bad a situation to have all those people shoulder to shoulder outdoors. I think this is an effort to go above and beyond, and you don't want to leave anyone in the province with an ability to say, well, if they get to do that, why don't we get to do this? And that's really where they're getting caught in this situation here. The unfortunate part about it is, I mean, I think the one thing that we'll remember from this entire thing is we'll look back on the pictures of when this was happening, and what will you see? You will see constant shots of video of a throng of people outside the building, shoulder to shoulder, and you'll see an empty building outside, right? And I mean, I would need, a scientist or a government official to sit down and have a long explanation of why one is okay and the other isn't okay. I think the short answer would be they don't think what's happening outside is okay, but they can't control it. But just the way we shoot it, the way people gather, the way it's accepted, the way nothing is said about it, it sure seems like it's accepted at this stage of the pandemic, and it just seems awfully strange, and it will look very, very strange down the road when the cameras show, a whole bunch of people celebrating outside, no one inside the building. It's just one of those things about this pandemic that sucks. There's a lot of those things, but boy, oh boy, for the Montreal Canadiens to be in this situation after this many years and not be able to enjoy it inside the building, it sucks, period.
Yeah, I'll echo those sentiments. I feel terrible for the fans. Obviously, it's the first time in 28 years they want an opportunity to be at the games, and they want to be able to support the team in a way it deserves it. Canadians themselves have earned that support. They've earned the opportunity to play and get the wind knocked into their sails the way the people at Amalie Arena the first time in a full house there in Game 2 did for their team. And it's harsh. It's a harsh reality. I think we really need to stop associating it with what happens outside the Bell Center in a free form kind of situation where Montreal's in a green zone. They cannot, like you said, Sean, create some kind of special rules where they don't enable people to be outside. It's not like they're making plans to get together with other people that are there. They're showing up with their group of 3, 4 to 5 people, and there's everyone else who are doing the same thing. And this isn't the Canadiens who are organizing it. In fact, they have nothing to do with it. It's not the city organizing it either, though they're scrambling for ways to find outdoor viewing situations for Canadiens fans without jamming them together in the scene that we've seen around the Bell Center. And it feels like a missed opportunity for sure, in terms of where we're at in the pandemic in Quebec and how we've done it. I know I've mentioned several times since I've been on here that I don't want to see us take a step backwards after taking so many forwards. Like, I never want to see us go backwards again. I think really why the Canadiens lost this bid and this pitch is because what they were asking for was something exceptional to them and something exceptional to the Bell Center versus the entire outdoor indoor venues rules that Quebec has established. And I don't think Quebec wants to put itself in a position where they are granting exceptional status to the Canadiens versus everyone else, even though many of the other venues are owned by Group CH, which owns the Canadiens. The thing, when we spoke to France Margaret Bélanger the other day, who's the executive vice president of the Canadiens in Group CH, one of the things she said where I really think she may have lost this bid, because it almost sounded as she was doing her press conference like she was giving us her pitch of what she pitched to the government, was when she said maybe the Bell Center could be considered testing ground to see how well they can pull this off for other venues.
Yeah.
And that to me kind of sounded like you are taking a risk in a very dramatic way, in a very dramatic upscale boost from where we were with 3,500 fans in the building. And people should understand that in a building that has a capacity of 21,273 people, the rules that were put in place were 250 people per section and 2,500 people max in that kind of environment. And because the Bell Center is so big, they were able to expand by 1,000 people to still stay within that 250 people per section situation. And Sean, like, you've been in the building, so have I. Like, they don't even let fans leave 5 minutes to go beat traffic or whatever it is, or the mob that's going to be outside. Like, they're calling section by section out of the Bell Center to leave. Like, it's a hard thing to manage so long as there are still restrictions. And unfortunately for the Canadiens, there are still restrictions in the province. And I think it sucks. Like, again, like, I think the Canadiens have so deserved this, but they can't be granted this exceptional status when, even though people say they're a public trust, they're a private company. That's what they are. Yeah. And they can't be treated differently than other private companies.
It's bad optics, right? I mean,
I find it
That's the
really
rule.
interesting, the idea of pitching themselves as a testing ground for that. It's one of the things, and Ken, I think we've brought this up before, but it would have been really interesting to see if there had been a real follow in the States and all of these athletic venues to kind of see if they would have done the same thing that you're talking about, Eric. I mean,
She had compared to specifically to Great Britain and looking at certain situations there in terms of what they've done in certain stadiums. But that to me is where they lost this. In suggesting that this should be testing ground is bringing in a risk element in the optics that I wonder if the government could get around. Like, I wonder how they would have seen that. I think I don't know. I think that's where they probably lost this whole thing.
Yeah, it would have been interesting if there would have been. I mean, I don't feel like we've seen any data from that. All of these sports teams in the States have opened things up and have full. I want to know if, in Tampa or in Vegas or in Colorado, if there was large spikes and that could be traced back to those games. We never heard anything about that, and it would have been interesting to know. I don't know if those governments were. You never know with the governments in each of those individual states whether or not they're handling this in a situation where they would want to find that information. Maybe they don't want it to get out that's a place where those are super spreader events, but it would have been interesting to know and see the science behind what's happened in the other NHL cities and NBA cities, because it sure does seem strange at this point to have teams in the United States having fans to that degree. And even with the players themselves, it's funny because if we're looking for reasons for caution, Dominic Ducharme, and to a degree, Joel Armia, I know it was a false positive, but there's your reason for caution right there. Is we're seeing situations where those players are getting double vaxxed. But I go back to how long ago was it that Robin Lehner was saying like the players down in the States had got double vaccinated, and where was their freedoms at one stage? They were fighting to get those freedoms and ended up getting those. And it just, I know it's two different governments, two different countries, and it makes it hard to narrow in on that, that information and the results that they're getting from that. But it would have been nice to have been able to point at something, and the Canadiens could have said, we want to do it because there's been this response to this here in this same league with the same NHL team. They're pulling this off. This is why we believe we can do it here. It seems like a missed opportunity, but at the same time, in different governments and different states, again, maybe they're not interested in digging into
Well,
that.
hang on. It's also happening in real time, and you don't want to be the super spreader that causes serious illness or death either, right? I mean, these are legitimate concerns, right? I mean, we're still in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Which,
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that, like, how long can we trace back the big crowds in the States to by this stage?
Well, it hasn't been all year, though, right? I mean, it
hasn't been all year, but shouldn't someone have been able to get, provide some kind of information of what these events, and I guess every jurisdiction is going to be different because the vaccination level may be different in Nevada as it is compared to Quebec. I don't know. Maybe we're going down a rabbit hole here. We should end on something to do with hockey here because we're closing this out. Eric,
yeah, I mean, let's dig in on Dom here, Eric. I mean, you've been around him. I mean, what's the impact for Game 3 outside of even just the emotional lift of getting your head coach back? I mean, where can he make his biggest impact on this series as he comes back behind the bench full time?
You know what? In managing it, he has the experience without disrespecting Luke Richardson, who I thought did a great job for the most part. But it's going to be an emotional lift more than anything. I got to it with Luke quite a bit. I asked him a couple questions about it. I asked the same thing to Dom when the plan started to come together in these playoffs. This room that the Canadiens have, the way they've, the way they can rely on these veterans to run the room and run the show, and the coaches can kind of sit back and they can repeat the message. But at the end of the day, it's really when the players take over, that's the greatest satisfaction for any coach. And I think for Luke, for Dom, that's the luxury they have as kind of rookie interim head coaches in the NHL and on this big of a stage, is to be able to rely on a room like that. So maybe the biggest lift that Dom provides the Canadiens is emotional in his return, in doing it for him. and he's going to want to guide them to a huge win in Game 3. And Luke as well, who did a really good job and is going back to coach the defense and managing that aspect of it. Might have been a little different tonight. Might have seen a bit of different combinations, especially in the third period. And they're going to have some real decisions to make back there. And I can't wait to see where this goes. The Canadiens are down 2. They squandered a real opportunity in Game 1, and in Game 2, the bounces went against them. And I think they're such a resilient team, and I'm not at a point where I'm going to count them out or bet against them. But they've got Everest to climb here against this Tampa team, and it's going to be really tough. And the Stanley Cup Final is coming back to the Bell Center. I think that's whether there's 3,500 fans in there or 10,500 or 21,273. That's going to be something special. I'm going to savor it personally because I've never seen it before. Forum I remember, but never seen it before at the Bell Center.
You should. I just want to jump in here, Sean. You and I have talked about this, but Eric, I was in Vancouver for Game 7. That year was covering the Manitoba Moose, and they had just made the announcement the Jets were back. The Canucks were the parent club of the Manitoba Moose, so for me, I was about to become an NHL beat writer, and I wanted to see the game on its biggest stage. I got down to Game 2 where Alex Burrows scored the overtime winner, and I was back for Game 7. And the vibe around the city with that same idea, the opportunity to become the first Canadian team since 1993 to win the Stanley Cup. It was absolutely exceptional all day long in the city and in the building. There was just this palpable energy. Yes, the life got sucked out of the building with Boston winning the game, but the vibe going into it and the atmosphere in the building was absolutely exceptional, and I can't wait for you to experience something similar this week. I know, yes, of course, it's not the same, it's not full, but I think it's going to be an absolutely electric environment, and the players have talked about it the whole time, about how special it is for them, and that's legit. You can always say, that it's like a Game 7 or it's like a Stanley Cup Final. Well, it's only that way when it is that way. So now they're getting to experience it. I think it's going to be just fantastic. And I'm with you. I think that the Montreal Canadiens played a great game today. I think they have another level. Like Corey Perry said, they got to find another gear. You want to beat Tampa 4-5, you have to find another gear. They have constantly found another gear. When they were down 3-1 to Toronto, when they played Winnipeg, when they played Vegas. Nobody said they could do it, and they found a way to do it. So I think it's going to be it's a spectacular test, and I think it's going to be a great game. And you said it perfectly. They're a resilient bunch, and I think this is another wonderful opportunity for them to write another chapter in what has been an incredible book so far in these playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think they're ready to end it, and I think it's pretty hard to take a 3-0 lead in the Stanley Cup Final, even if you're a championship team like the Lightning are. I'm not putting it past them being able to do it. They're an incredible team, and when they win a game that they absolutely don't deserve, it tilts things in their favor. The things I'm going to be looking for mainly in Game 3, Carey Price. Like I said, I don't think he's the reason the Canadiens lost this game, but he can be better. And whether I think that or not, whether I think he was the reason or wasn't the reason, there's a lot of people that are going to be pointing the finger at him, watching Vasilevskiy turn in 42 saves and seeing Price give up 3 goals on 21 shots or whatever it was that the Lightning got. And a couple of them that looked not the best. I don't think it's on him, but it doesn't really matter what I think. I know what people are going to say, and I know it's going to get back to Carey. And look, we asked to speak to him after the game, and he wasn't there. Shea Weber was in his place. So, and we'll see if he's there tomorrow morning, or I guess this morning when the Canadiens do their availability before leaving for Montreal, and we'll see what he says. There was a point where he had a huge comment coming off a 4-0 loss that really stoked the Canadiens and got them back in the Toronto series, and tomorrow morning would provide him another opportunity to say something that could get back to his team and stoke that fire.
Well, speaking of that, I thought it was, I'd said this to Ken before you hopped on, Eric. Corey Perry had made a big speech that the players referenced after they went down 3-1 to Toronto. Sounds like he said something similar in the room tonight, told us that he told the guys. And it's just that whole idea of appreciating where you are. And, here you're in the Stanley Cup Finals with an opportunity to go home and win some games and get yourself back into a series. You take the global look at it, the Montreal Canadiens would have taken that 10 times out of 10 if you would have offered it to them back in March. So
this guy's saying that I look crushed, by the way. I'm just exhausted. It's not.
Yeah, we're
good.
grinding.
Don't worry.
We're grinding here. And we're going to keep grinding. Eric, I hop on a plane. Sounds like I'll see you tomorrow. It sounds like there's a supper date that we're both part of. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be great to see you. Great to catch up with you. Thanks for coming on the show, Ken. Phenomenal job as usual, and the chat room once again directing our conversation with great comments and great questions. We appreciate the hell out of you. Keep coming back. We're going to keep doing this. Hopefully the Canadiens can make it a series and there can be some more jovial post games that we can hit up down the stretch here. Either way, we will be here as long as there's life in the Stanley Cup Final. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you after Game 3.